It's Bullseye. I'm Jesse Thorn. I want to give you a quick warning before we get into this next interview. We're going to be talking openly and honestly about sexual assault. So if you aren't comfortable listening to that, it'll be about 30 minutes or so. My guest is Stephanie Beatriz. For 5 seasons, she starred on the hit Fox show Brooklyn Nine-Nine. It's one of my absolute favorite comedies on TV. Everybody in the cast is great. Terry Crews, Andy Samberg, Chelsea Peretti, everybody. Stephanie plays Detective Rosa Diaz, and Rosa is easily the toughest cop in the precinct. She's brave, serious, she rides a motorcycle and wears a black leather jacket. She's so tough, in fact, that she won't even let a cold keep her down.
I don't need your help because I am not sick. Gina, where is the cold medicine?
I hate to point out the obvious, but why do you need the meds if you're not sick, huh?
To fight off the cold symptoms that my healthy body is exhibiting.
Now, Stephanie is starring in a brand new movie. It's called The Light of the Moon. In it, she plays Bonnie, a young woman living in Brooklyn with her boyfriend. At the beginning of the movie, she goes through a vicious sexual assault. And from there, it's the story of the aftermath of that event, its effect on her work life, her relationships, even little stuff, like whether she wears headphones when she's getting off the subway. And as often as we see rape in our entertainment, this story of its aftermath is one we see very rarely. Stephanie joins me from NPR studios in New York. Stephanie Beatriz, welcome to Bullseye. It's great to have you on the show.
Thank you very much. It's great to be here.
So here's the deal. We're going to talk about your new movie, The Light of the Moon, in a little bit.
Great.
But because the subject matter is so serious, I want to talk about the silly stuff first.
Okay.
Because I think that's an easier transition. So let's talk about Brooklyn Nine-Nine, which is one of my favorite shows on television.
Oh, great. I'm so happy to hear that.
It is. I don't miss an episode. And I wonder how you got this gig, because it is an interesting array of types of actor on the show, ranging from straight-up comedy people to the most serious of dramatic actors.
That came about in a lot of different ways. One of the main ways that did happen was Allison Jones was our casting director for Brooklyn Nine-Nine, and she's cast a lot of stuff. Parks and Rec, she cast Freaks and Geeks, which is one of my old favorite shows. She just is good at putting a great group of people together. I don't know, I think casting directors are sort of the unsung heroes of Hollywood. I think that they have a really incredibly tough job, and she pulled us sort of all out of our little respective comfortable worlds and threw us together and made some kind of like alchemical magic.
She is really kind of she's been on this show before.
Oh, she's fantastic, isn't she?
Yeah, I really had to talk her into coming onto the show because she's
shy.
Very modest about her work. But
yes,
she's cast like 75% of the great comedy of the last 15 years or so.
Yeah.
And it seems like this show, particularly as with Parks and Recreation and The Office, is a show where the characters grow out of the actors on the program, that the personalities of those actors and the way that they match up together really drive the show in a way that's actually relatively unusual for TV comedy.
I would agree with that statement. I think, one of the best examples of that is actually how I was cast. I initially read for the part of Amy Santiago, who was detailed in the script. It said that she was Latina. And so I went in for that role, and Allison said, why don't you come back? I want you to come back for this Amy role, but I also want you to come back for this character of Megan. And Megan was essentially Rosa, but before I came in. So, like, in the script, it's described her as really tough and scary, real New Yorker. And I sort of took that and ran with it. And then when I was cast, when Mike Schur and Dan Gore decided to cast me, they said, look, we love you. We're going to change the name of the character to sort of suit you better. And that's where Rosa Diaz came in.
Did you imagine that the big break in your career would come from a sitcom?
I did. I wanted that so badly. Sitcoms, for me, have always been a real touchstone of the American experience for me. I immigrated to the United States when I was 2 or 3, and my father and I would watch Seinfeld religiously. I know every episode of Seinfeld, and to me, particularly sitcoms, I think, are the new sort of Shakespeare in a weird way. You know, in Shakespeare's day, everyone would go to the theater, and that's where you would all connect and like think and talk about the human experience, right? You would all be in this one space watching this one kind of story. And now it's sitcoms, I think, that connect us in a way, in that way.
Did you have Seinfeld peoples in school in Texas where you grew up?
Seinfeld
Peoples. Like, did you have somebody that I remember in middle school, I knew the people that I could go talk to about what happened on Seinfeld?
Well, I mean, my dad, my dad and I would watch it together and we would dissect it. We would literally dissect it. And my dad would be like, you know why that's funny? Because, and then he would like try to explain to me why what had just happened was hilarious. We would talk about it all the time. It was really like the way that my dad and I bonded a lot. Because like, as a teenager, you don't like your parents. You think that they're awful. And they are, but really you are the awful one. So it was the only way that my dad and I were able to sort of bond and like have a thing that was just ours together when I was in that sort of awful, awkward stage.
I just really like one of the weird things about Seinfeld that I only noticed as an adult. And again, I say this as the biggest Seinfeld fan. I couldn't love the show more.
Yeah.
Well, for one thing, as a kid, I don't think I understood that the characters were supposed to be bad people. I think I basically identified with them literally with no problem at all.
Yeah.
So that was one thing. But the other thing is, like, every character that's not the main cast on the show is essentially a cartoon character.
Oh, for sure. And
one of the weird things that sort of makes happen on the show, one of the consequences of that, is that every person who's not white on the show is a cartoon character, and they're often their cartooniness is based on their ethnicity.
You've nailed the main problem that I have with Seinfeld. You've nailed it. Yeah.
I'm glad. I feel like I want to be able to acknowledge that without putting down the significance for me of Seinfeld, or that I think it is a brilliant work of art or anything.
Yeah. Well, I mean, as an actor, you're coming into, especially like, so for example, all of those actors were guest stars, right? And they're dying to get onto what is ostensibly one of the most popular shows on television. I think I just used ostensibly correctly, but I'm not sure. We'll think about it. What's one of the most popular shows on television, right? So your agent calls you, they say, you have an audition for Seinfeld, and you read the sides and you think, damn it, it's not really a great version of who I am, but you want to do the role. So you go in and then you book it, and you can't change the lines once you're on set, You can only just throw yourself at this thing and do the best possible job that you can. And I've certainly played roles where, looking back, I kind of wish that maybe I hadn't taken that part, or maybe I wish I could have said something at the time about how the part was written, but you're not always in a position of power to do that, and sometimes you really need the money. And so I wish that, more writers' rooms had people of color in them. I wish that more writers' rooms had LGBTQ people in them, IA people in them. That is something that's slowly but surely changing, but that was always the hardest thing for me when watching one of my favorite shows. And like you talk about like Friends. I mean, it took forever for us to see people of color on Friends, and like even sometimes like in the background you're just watching the show and you're like, where are the black people, where are the Latino people? This is supposed to be New York City. Like, I've never seen a New York that looks like this. It's the same as when you watch like some Woody Allen films and you're just like, where are the people of color? Where are they? Do you not see us? Do we not exist for you?
One of the things that I really like about Brooklyn Nine-Nine is that not only does it have, it has a cast and a set of characters that represent a kind of a broad variety of different kinds of people who, might work in a police station in New York.
Yeah.
But it wears those cultural categories pretty lightly and elegantly. That they matter in the show. They're not ignored in the show. But at the same time, they are not the subject matter of the show.
Yes.
And it's so rare that a television show does not have one or the other, that either ethnicity and, sexuality and so forth are ignored, or that they are what the thing is about.
Right.
And it's nice to have something that acknowledges the differences, the cultural differences between the characters, but it's not the center of the show.
That's a really high compliment. Thank you. I mean, I can't take credit, but I'll say thank you for all of the writing staff. I think I think the best thing about that is, right, like, that's how we live our lives most of the time. Yeah, sometimes this stuff comes up in your day-to-day, but, I certainly don't enter a room and announce, like, hello, my name is Stephanie Beatriz, and I identify as Latina and bisexual. Like, that's not something that I don't have, like, that's not what we do as human beings. Like,
you don't have to. You've got that printed on your T-shirt.
I actually do have a couple T-shirts that say something like that. But yeah, like, I think that is the beauty of that show. There was that episode, I think it was last season, called Moo Moo, where Terry deals with racial profiling. And some people didn't like that episode. They were not into it. They were like, stay in your lane, Brooklyn Nine-Nine. You're supposed to be this funny escape from the world. And other people really appreciated that we talked about it because, we're a cop show, and that is something that's going on in the world that cops deal with.
I feel like you say that it is part of the way you live your life. But I think that one of the functions of white privilege is that I, as a white person, especially as a straight white dude, I can presume that, the cultural milieu around me almost all of the time will not ask me to stretch or consider myself from an outside perspective or my own perspective from an outside perspective. Mm-hmm. And that has been the way that television shows have worked for a long time because they've been run by people like me who just, like, either they were like making a choice, like, this is going to be the episode where we deal with race, or it was invisible.
Right. I remember having this discussion with an actor friend of mine who was saying, he's also a white cis dude, and he was like, you're really lucky because you're getting cast a lot, and, like, Hollywood's just, like, really into people of color lately. And I was like, that is a strange statement for you to make, on so many levels. Number one, I'm going to remind you that anytime you turn on the television, you flip your channels and you're seeing yourself. You're seeing yourself on Friends. You're seeing yourself on Cheers. You're seeing yourself on Frasier. You're seeing yourself on Seinfeld. Those people all look like you. You can identify with those people. Where am I? Where are my black friends? Where are my Asian friends? Where are my friends that identify as trans or asexual? Like, they're nowhere to be found, And so, like, if you're constantly inundated with this idea that you don't exist, you start to feel like, well, maybe I don't have any rights, or maybe I shouldn't ask for things because, like, I'm probably not equal, or the worst, my story is not important.
Let's listen to a scene from Brooklyn Nine-Nine with my guest, Stephanie Beatriz. And so she plays Rosa Diaz, a detective on the squad of the titular police station. And she is really tough and rides a motorcycle and never shows emotion. And then she falls in love with this guy called Adrian Pimento, who is what was he? So he's like a former crooked cop on the lam or something. What was the setup for?
He was undercover. He was undercover
for
a really long time.
Like 10 years or something.
Yeah.
And did a bunch of unspeakable nightmarish things while undercover to stay undercover. He's played by Jason Mantzoukas, the great Jason Mantzoukas. And in this scene, the two of you are announcing your engagement.
Check it out, losers! Guess who got their dealer?
Nice. How'd it go down?
We chased him through a subway tunnel, back up through a storm drain. Adrian and I got engaged, and then we busted him with half a kilo of coke in his sock.
Wait. What did you just say?
It was in his sock. These dummies, they never think we're gonna check their socks.
No, before that, weirdo, the getting engaged part?
Oh, yeah, we got engaged.
Engaged?
Yeah.
As in to be wed?
Yeah.
Seriously?
Yeah.
Amazing! We want deets. Tell us everything. I don't want to toot my own horn or anything, but it was super romantic.
You follow. I'll cut him off in the alley.
Okay, wait. You want to get married?
Yep.
You don't seem like a cold, brutal human being in real life. Is it weird that people know you so well from this television program, from being in their house once a week, and that you are this entirely different person?
I mean, it's not weird for me. I think it can be weird for fans of the show. I sometimes sense a bit of disappointment when I'm not who they've met. They've seen her over and over and over. They're used to her vocal patterns, the way she moves, the way she dresses. And when they meet me, they're sort of sometimes astounded. But also, it's very flattering in another way, Like, I sometimes describe myself as a character actress. And I think that holds true for the Rosa role especially, because she's so different than I am.
So, Stephanie, I want to talk about your new movie. And I want to give a heads up to folks who are listening that the new movie, which is called The Light of the Moon, is about sexual assault. It's about specifically the sort of ramifications and after effects of sexual assault on a character played by Stephanie. And so that's what we're going to be talking about for the rest of the interview, so that you know. Let's play a clip from the film. This is the morning after the assault, and Stephanie is in bed, and she's got a big shiner. Her character's name is Bonnie, and her boyfriend, her live-in boyfriend, who's played by Michael Stahl-David, is bringing her breakfast in bed.
Are you just gonna sit here and watch me eat? The show's not about to start, Matt.
No, they told me at the hospital that I'm supposed to reinforce like a positive male influence in your life.
I don't think you're supposed to tell me that.
Yeah, probably not.
It's okay. It's okay, sit down. Look, I know this is weird and uncomfortable, and I don't know what to say, but just try and be yourself, okay?
Sure. Sorry.
And stop apologizing. You're gonna kiss me again?
I'm dying to kiss you. I just don't want to hurt you.
I can handle it.
I think rape is such a common, what do they call that in dramatic, inciting incident in drama, especially in film and television.
Yes.
But the consequences and ramifications of it are typically
forgotten.
Yeah, I mean, so simply reduced to something like justice or revenge.
Yes.
Both of which tend to be treated from a male perspective as well.
Yes. I mean, and a lot of times you see the rape becomes like this character was sort of a nothing character, and then she's raped, and now she becomes a fully fleshed out human being, which is like an insane way to portray that. It's insane, but it's so normal, and we've become anesthetized to it. Oh yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I was watching this thing and she got raped, and that was it. That's it, right? And like this is an act that takes place constantly. I mean, it's like 1 in 5 women, I think, that have been raped in their lifetimes. People are dealing with this. So many of the people that you know in your office, your friends, they're not talking about it necessarily, but so many people that you know have lived through this, and no one is telling their story. No one is telling that story.
Was it scary for you to take that on?
Hell yeah. Yes, it was extremely scary. I feel an immense amount of responsibility to try to tell that story in the most honest way that I can. I've never been sexually assaulted, but trying to, talk to that friend of mine, a couple friends of mine that have lived through something like this, and then trying to really put myself in the shoes of Bonnie the whole time and just like live that world as honestly as possible the whole time. I am hopeful that people that see the film can sort of get a glimpse of what that might be like for someone that's lived through that. But I also know that it's one specific story. It's not everyone's story. It's one specific story that we're telling. We're telling Bonnie's story, and not everyone's story is that story. So I know that sometimes people won't be able to identify with it. But I did my best, and I certainly threw myself at it as much as I could. So I'm hopeful that people connect with it.
How did it affect your life to live with this as an actor?
It was weird. It was, you know, what I wanted to do on that set was create an environment in which everyone felt like they were working together to tell this story in the best way that they possibly could. So I made it a point to make the environment really friendly. I tried to learn everyone's name, and if I didn't, I was at least like conscious that everyone was working and everyone had a job to do, and that I wasn't more important than anyone else, you know? On the particular day that we filmed the rape scene, I was pretty quiet and I kept to myself, but I tried to kind of like keep spirits up, you know, because I was like, we're filming this really dark thing. I don't want it to also feel super dark on set. Like, I want everyone to feel like I'm okay, you know? And I was okay because we blocked out the rape scene shot for shot, sort of like you would a fight scene or something like that. And, you know, we did the scene over and over. Jess, our director, kept the camera rolling. We talked about, you know, there were a couple times where the actor that was playing the rapist, he was a little too far away from me in some of the shots. And Autumn Aiken, our DP, who's also a woman, at one point she stopped and she was like, look, it doesn't look right on camera. Like, it needs to be more aggressive. And so everyone asked me, are you okay with that? I said, yes, absolutely. Let's do it. Let's get the shot. We did it. And that day was hard, but it was also okay. It was manageable, right? And so then I get home and I'm eating dinner and I just feel so drained and awful. And then I get in the shower and take a shower and I just cried for a really long time. And as I was crying, I thought, this isn't even close to what survivors/victims feel. This is like nothing. This is nothing compared to what they go through, you know? This is me pretending for one afternoon that this happened.
Your character also, you know, I mean, she is suffering with this horrible trauma through most of the course of the film, but she is also a person who has friends and fun and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
That struck me as a very important part of the story, that while this is a story about her, about the ramifications of the fact that she was sexually assaulted, it isn't solely a story about her as a victim and person who is suffering, that she has relationships that have, you know, a positive impact on her life. She has fun, you know, it's all colored by this event, but it's there.
One of the things that I liked the most about the script is that Bonnie's really funny. She has a really strong sense of humor throughout the film, and some of it is gallows humor, but it's funny, man. She's really funny. And I thought that was such an important part of this character, because like she's still who she was, you know? Like there's just this thing happened, right? And it happened to her, but it doesn't rob her of who she was before. She's funny, and she brings that humor into so many of the scenes. I thought that was, number one, necessary, because like you cannot sit through a movie that is dealing with such a dark subject and not be able to release the pressure valve. Like, you can't, you know, just dramaturgically. But on top of that, it shows you that like it's not going to be the defining moment of this woman's life ever. She just won't let that be. And I think most people that have gone through this thing refuse to let it be like that. That's, you know, I walk in the room and I'm the woman that was raped, or I'm the man that was raped.
I think that a lot of rape stories that we see in scripted entertainment are on cop shows, and one of the things that defines most cop shows is the delivery of justice.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, part of the reason that watching Law and Order or whatever is satisfying is that you know from the beginning that as the process works its way through, that in the end justice will be delivered.
Right.
And it seems to me like one of the premises of this film, The Light of the Moon, is that not only is justice not guaranteed, but justice isn't, you know, the way that we think of justice through the legal system. You know, it's not a cure for trauma.
Right.
It doesn't resolve things.
It doesn't. I mean, how could it, right? Like you know, let's say you're one of the lucky ones and they actually catch who did it to you, you know? let's say, then you probably have to go to trial. And then you're probably going to be up on the witness stand. And then you've got to live through, retelling your story. And then let's say you are one of the lucky ones and your perpetrator goes to jail, which does not often happen, by the way. Then you go home and you have to keep living your life. But the thing still happened to you, right? Like the thing still happened. And that, I think, is one of the things that I think that our film is really trying to show. It's like, because of the media that we've consumed, like justice is always served and the bad guy always gets caught. And I mean, a great example of that in another film that I really love is Room. And in Room, those characters, they get out and they find their way to freedom. But the repercussions of what they suffered are still affecting them all the time, And even though, like, he gets caught and justice is hopefully going to be served, it still doesn't feel fair or right, And there's still so much victim blaming going on. It's like, why did you put yourself in a position to have that happen to you? You're going to have to live with that forever. I mean, we're seeing it like now in all of these women that have come forward about Harvey Weinstein, and it's like so many people, the response is like, well, you went to the hotel room. I mean, you took the meeting. Whew, we have so much work to do. We have so much work to do.
I feel like your character in The Light of the Moon, part of her struggle is, and it dovetails with the way these things are represented in film generally, is her struggle is to be the protagonist of her life in the context of this horrible thing having happened. That what she wants is to be able to choose her path, to let her sense of self be what drives her.
Yes. And not have it be defined by something that she didn't choose, didn't want, can't control. I think in a weird way, that's sort of all of us want that, which I think is what makes Bonnie a good protagonist in the film, is that we can all identify with her in some way or another, but especially the feeling of like, how dare you tell me that I'm broken and that I have to do it this way, or I have to live this has to be the path now. I get to choose. I want to choose. And her ultimate like frustration with, the limits that she has, because she wants to have it all go back to the way it was before, or like have it all just be over. All of the feelings, all of it just be like done, end it. And she can't do that by herself, and she ultimately has to reach out to other people to have that happen, and that's not something Bonnie is comfortable with.
Well, Stephanie, I am so grateful that you took all this time to come be on Bullseye. It was really great to get to talk to you.
Oh, it was my absolute pleasure. It was really lovely speaking with you.
Stephanie Beatriz, The Light of the Moon is in theaters November 1st. Don't miss it.